Hello.
All right, good evening. Thank you for joining us for the May 9th, 2019 Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board meeting. Let's do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll lead that. I'm sorry, I can't stand up. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The mission of the Civilian Police Oversight Agency Board is advancing constitutional policing and accountability for APD in the Albuquerque community. At this time, I'll take a motion for the approval of the agenda.
So move.
And a second? All in favor? Aye. Public comment, we have one. Mr. Perard?
Join. I don't have a voice.
If you'll give us just a minute to get our timekeeper situated. And we have 2 minutes, I believe, is that right? Three minutes? 3 minutes. All on you?
Okay, ready? Thank you. My name is Tony Perard. It's been a while since I've been here. I'd just like to say that as far as this settlement agreement goes, it's not going anywhere. The communities have been falsely led into believing that they're actually doing something for APD when APD continues to cover up. There's several examples. You'll have a few tonight. As far as the agreement goes, Police Officer Dobrik and several others have been violating that agreement over and over again because the police overtime was supposed to be stopped, period, until the settlement agreement was done and over with. But he continues to violate the rules and defraud the public. Chief Geyer also continues to cover up certain matters about police officers who are drunk on the job and leave their police cars on mediums, drive home. They also have complaints of several officers pulling guns when they're off duty. They get into accidents and they pull a gun and threaten the person that they hit. They should be in jail. Why are they not in jail? Same thing with Jennifer Garcia. There was a conflict of interest here with whether being married to the assistant chief of police was a conflict of interest. Do you think it would be if both of these people are working together? She's working in internal affairs and has been fudging police reports for years. Can you imagine how many corrupt police officers have gotten away with stealing from people, tearing up their identifications, homeless people. This is still going on, actually, and nothing has been done about it. And I think that you're all being played fools by Ed Harness. It's a shame that the whole thing about the subpoena power backfired. You were supposed to have the subpoena power, not Ed Harness. There, he can intimidate any witness that he wants to in order to get the result that he wants. The truth still doesn't get told. But this settlement agreement is down the toilet, and we're like on the last year and a half now is going to be the downhill run to basically shut you down and the CPCs, because there will be no more need for it. There's no independence on this board, I'm sorry to say. But that was what I wanted to get you, so maybe we can try another way.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, I think I signed up as well.
I have you down for the portion of the agenda discussing the cases and the request for appeal. Sure, come on up.
Madam Chair, POB members, my name is Sylvia Lancham. You've received a number of correspondence from me, but echoing on what Tony said, since I gotten into getting into the police reform, beginning in 2010, working towards getting the DOJ here in conjunction with Jewel Hall. The reality of since 2014, when the CASA was signed, there hasn't been any real reform. I think the problem, in part, is the POB doesn't have teeth to really oversee the police. They're being used as a tool. It's unfortunate, but it was the same situation with your predecessors, the Police Oversight Commission, who essentially, the leader at that time, I.R.O. Hammer, they were told that that in fact Hammer worked for the chief and the mayor, and 3 POB members resigned in disgust. They knew they were wasting their time, and you're going through the same situation. Tony said that Ginger has really painted a picture that's not true, and that's really true. He portrays you folks as having a meaningful role in reform, but you don't. You know that the chief overrules you, and even did on, and I won't discuss my appeal, but he even looking at Ed Harness, and not Ed Harness, but Simon Drobeck and Lieutenant McFay, I think it was. I mean, how do people excuse people that overly commit crime and still have credibility? If I sat on a POB, and I volunteered for it many times as well as POC, and I saw what was happening, I would resign, to be honest with you, because you really have no power. You're supposed to be oversight, but you have no oversight power. The only power you have is to approve what Mr. Harness does and what the chief does. And that's a sad commentary on how they're mistreating you, how they're disrespecting you. And right now, I'm glad that I wasn't selected under those circumstances. But you good people are being disrespected. You're wasting your time. You really are. Because anything you rule against the police will be overturned by the chief of police. And that is true now. It was true also under your predecessors, POC. There's a lot of honest cops out there, one of which gave me a tip on this appeal that I'm making tonight. And there are a lot of honest cops that want things to get better. And nothing's going to get better unless you folks weigh in, unless the other citizens weigh in and say enough is enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right. Did everybody have an opportunity to review the minutes from the last board meeting? Okay, I'll take a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Reports from city staff. APD?
Throwing your trash over here.
Good evening, Madam Chair and members of the board. I'm Commander Mark Velarde of Internal Affairs Professional Standards. How you doing, Paul? Good, thank you. So for the month of April, we had 41,498 calls for service, which is a decrease of 618 from the previous month. We had total internal affairs cases completed during the month were 3. For discipline imposed for internal affairs cases, we had 1 letter of reprimand, 3 verbal reprimands, 1 suspension of 8 hours. And we had 16 EIS alerts distributed throughout the department. Any questions? Thank you.
Do we have somebody here from the CACU?
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Evening. This is my first time presenting, so excuse me if I don't have all the questions that you might want answered, but feel free to talk to me about anything that you need to. I'm Lieutenant Nicholas Sanders for the Albuquerque Police Department's Juvenile Section, so I oversee the Crimes Against Children and the Crime Exploitation Division. I know we're looking for an update on the CACU, specifically Crimes Against Children Unit. I'll give you an oversight of the unit, the oversight of where we're trying to go, some of the things that we're trying to implement as soon as possible, some of our needs, and we can open it up for anything from there. The CACU division is assigned 10 detectives. Right now I have 2 that are either on an administrative or an unfilled position. I have 2 positions that are currently also vacant and open, circulating to be closed hopefully by Friday and filled by additional units. Which then leaves me down to 6 detectives that can actually take calls for service. Those calls for service range from anywhere between 1,100 to 1,400 that we're looking at per month.
Wow.
Since the time, approximately about a year ago, we implemented a different policy and procedure to respond to all juvenile calls, whether they were neglect, abuse, or sexual or physical. With that implementation, our numbers and percentages kind of skyrocketed. We saw anywhere from an 800% to a 1,700% increase in calls for service that the officers had to respond to, and then we saw that influx run into the detectives to try to deal with. As such, each one of my detectives are carrying somewhere between 40 to 70 cases. And they're trying to hash through those as much as possible. Reference the 2014 task force to try to look at things to improve the CACU process. They had recommended that 25 would be excessive, so we've exceeded that significantly. They've also talked about civilian support to try to streamline different areas. I do have one very good admin support, but I had lost my other. I was given approval today to get a part-time 20-hour-a-week individual into there, but I don't feel that that would make much of a dent into a lot of what we're having to see. I've been approached by different members of the mayor's side and been able to push out a proposal to them to seek out and give a pathway of where I think CACU needs to go to be able to be completely functionable. First part of that was to review the policies and procedures that we have in place and to work with CYFD, specifically the SCI, which is a state child intake reporting unit, to see what types of calls come into APD as a whole and which ones then come also over to CACU. Their new secretary, deputy secretary, have been working graciously with us. I have a great meeting scheduled for them tomorrow, and I'm hoping that we'll get something in place that will go ahead and reduce our calls. Even though we get a reduction of calls if they go ahead and go with the process, we're still seeing what I would consider a very excessive amount of cases reported over to the CACU side to have the detectives to review. Some of those other adding factors to the CACU detectives are that a lot of these calls are coming after hours for officers to respond to, basically between 5 o'clock in the evening to 08 in the morning. Even though the officers are able to go out and do an initial investigation, they're not able to do the follow-up that may be necessary to prosecute the case. Those usually do fall into our realm, even though that they may be a misdemeanor crime, which just adds to the detective's caseload. As I stated, I had put together a proposal for the mayor's side and to look for going forward with the CACU. I'd asked to try to push up the unit to 15 detectives. It may seem excessive, but simply due to the fact that the types of crimes that the detectives investigate are very difficult for them to consistently be exposed to and deal with. We get a large turnover at CACU. My average detective will stay roughly about 2 years before they seek a different position or go back out to the field. I was seeking the number of 15 because I would truly believe that I would have about 12 detectives available at any point in time to do investigations and support community outreach and anything else that came across the table, and that'd give me a room of about 3 flux detectives that would be coming in and going out or being trained. I had talked about and referenced the 2014 task force for civilians support. They had recommended 2. I'm recommending the 2 to be filled. One, like I said, is already filled, but the second one would be a 20-hour week position, but I'd rather have a full-time position into that. There's enough work and enough liaison and enough public interaction that needs to be occurring that is not occurring. But I was also seeking to get 2 additional civilians into that position with some sort of law enforcement background, maybe retired law enforcement, that would be able to help with some of these historical cases that we are getting inundated with. And what I mean by historical cases is we have a lot of individuals that will report sexual abuse well past a year. And for an officer to go back and dig through that information and to progress with what would be considered a cold case investigation is extremely time intensive, but not always resulting in an interview with the offender. Because of that specifically, I do believe that we could function well with some civilian support to push those cases over to the district attorney's office to be able to prosecute and go forward with and alleviate some of the immediate necessity for a detective to investigate. That is a wide branch of what I'm looking at. We're looking at revamping our care program, which is the frontline officers out in the field being educated to be able to handle juvenile calls specifically. I've got mixed numbers from my fiscal side and my predecessors as far as to what we're at and what we're allotted. I am looking to try to get that back up to 50 and implemented by July 1st. That is a little bit of a monumental task because we have to meet the DOJ mandate for the training, which we are in the process of doing, but it does take a lot of progression to get to where we need to go.
I don't want to stop you, but I also have so many questions that, do you have a lot more to go that you want to present to us?
I can
Just
leave
give
it
me a
at
ballpark.
that because I could take up a lot of time, but I think those are the really highlighted areas that I wanted to put out that, you know, we're definitely in need of resources both on the civilian and law enforcement side. There's a need for it, and I'll leave it at that.
May I? I'm the one who asked for you to come here.
Yes.
And my reason is this. I think that there is nothing more significant to a community and its relationship with its police department than cases like the ones we've seen in the community recently, murders of children and potential prostitution of children. And we were concerned about whether or not you felt you had learned or your department had learned more in this time. We know there's a new chief, there's a new mayor, but there's also the new people of the State Department. It was the early stages of that, and in last January, we met with one of the deputy chiefs and the commander of the Family Advocacy Center. And we wanted to know, what have you learned from these cases? What have you seen? Obviously, there's a lot of cases, clearly more than anybody can imagine. And those are just the ones you're hearing about. So, you know, we know this is a nonstop situation. But as a community, we have to deal with it. And there is nothing more clear to the community than abuse of its children. They are seen by the community as complete innocents, and in 99 times out of 100 they are. And so we are how we deal with this affects how the police department is seen by the community as a whole. And that's why it's so important, aside from the value of helping children get out of harm's way. So my first question has to do with, is the 10 positions that you're talking about that are filled at the number 6, is that a new number, 10? I realize the department went through a lot of staffing issues. How did that affect the number that you have now at 6? You're talking about 15. What's the likelihood of that happening? How does that compare to other cities of like size? Clearly, we're not the only ones in this country dealing with this. It's everywhere. And it's so embedded in the situation of crime and abuse in families and trouble, drug addiction, everything you can name. So those are the kinds of things that are running through my head right now, just off the top of my head. I really specifically asked for what did you learn from Omar Varela, from Victoria Martins, and from the 7-year-old girl. What have you learned just looking at those? Because obviously those are the worst outcomes. And whatever you learned, whatever that is, how has it affected what you're doing? And one of the things I saw was special orders that came out of that. And I'd like to know more about that. And are there more coming? Who's helping you get this under control?
So the numbers, I need more numbers for detectives. That's just a flat out realization to be able to address the concerns and the problems that are coming forward. Roughly, Sky took in 14,139 calls last year, 2018.
In New Mexico or in Albuquerque?
For Albuquerque, for us. All 14,139 were screened through CACU by one person. Those can range from a lot of different avenues to whether there's an immediate response necessary or something a little historic, or it's a wide range of topics. But each one of those is getting reviewed. They may not necessarily be getting the most attention that is needed, simply because we have a limited amount of resources and we have to work together with our CYFD partners. The thing that I've really looked at and really learned from is the communication level between the CYFD partners and us can be improved. We are looking at implementing a process to bring the CYFD investigators into a CACU side over at APD, so that the detectives and the CYFD workers would work hand in hand. What I've looked at on those historical cases that you've met is that they did not necessarily meet the priority system that is implemented right now for CYFD, and they didn't meet the thresholds that are implemented for the CACU detectives to be fully involved. They did meet the limitations and requirements for field officers to go out and be involved in, but necessarily the dots were not always connected because of the multiple levels that are there.
Has that caused you to take a look at your criteria?
That has caused me to take a look at my criteria, and I'm
In what way?
With case management, case review, and like I was talking about, the implementation of bringing CYFD directly involved next to a CACU detective. The reasoning behind that is the way that the calls come inwards and the way that the CYFD workers will go out and utilize their resources because they do have the means to intervene to those types of cases, and I think would be the best way for the resolutions. That information doesn't easily get over to the APD side. You may end up getting an individual that's had 3 head lice, 3 medical simple cases that would hit the CYFD side to go out and investigate and follow up on, and they would start looking at like, you know what, maybe a little bit more intervention needs to be here. But that communication level over to the APD side has been not the best. I am looking at ways to improve that, and I do have ideas to improve that, and I'm hoping sometime close after July 1st that we can start implementing some of those ideas to get things streamlined.
Let me ask you another
Yes.
question. In the conversation I had with the deputy chief and the commander of the Family Advocacy Center and your predecessor, they talked about, they were hopeful that with this new administration, CYFD, the guy being appointed the head of CYFD, that they would have better relations. May I suggest to you that this is not an option based on personalities? It must be hardwired. There will never be, or let me put it in the positive, there should always be a hardwired process by which CYFD and APD work together. It should not be left to personalities. And it can't be as a community, or we will have more Omar Varellas, we will have more of these things, more deaths of children. And it is critical that APD commit to that. In fact, the commander from the Family Advocacy Center suggested that perhaps there should be MOUs, which are, able to be used, dealt with in court. So I would ask you what progress has been made. They were going to bring this up last February,
Right.
this past February, with the new head of CYFD. Where's that at?
So Senator Blaylock and Secretary Blaylock and Deputy Secretary Locke and I have been meeting since they've gotten into office. So my first meeting with Blaylock was, I think, his 3rd day on his job, and we were starting to implement things. Deputy Secretary Locke and I have been meeting for about the past 2 weeks, and we have a tentative MOU that we're going to present tomorrow.
Oh, good.
To try to progress forward with some of these avenues.
And
They-
stop just a
Go ahead.
second, please. The MOU includes what that's different from the past?
The MOU outlines specific calls and criterias that will be coming into SCI to get to frontline officers with better information and resources to how to go forward with it. The ones that would not be, quote unquote, what they will call emergencies or priority ones, their priority twos will come into us as they have been, but we are going to be screening them much more robustly to identify where we need to go forward with them, whether it's a detective assignment, a field response, or a collaboration with the CYFD side. That secondary level, that P2 level, is where I think that we can really benefit from housing APD CACU unit and CYFD investigators with their supervisors pretty much directly next to each other.
Would they be at the Family Advocacy Center or another facility?
Right now, they are at the Family Advocacy Center, but they are literally on the other side of the hallway. I literally want to put them desk to desk. We are getting to the point to where we are probably going to have that space right after July 1st, pending some infrastructure things. And that is one of the first things that I'm trying to get pushed forward and get done. I do have the support of my command staff to go forward with that. And I do have the support of CYFD to go forward with that, and they think it'd be a great idea. The communication level between CACU, CYFD, APD in a whole has greatly improved from what my understanding of it used to be.
And
There-
the MOU should hopefully lock in some of that.
The MOUs are great for policies and procedures about how to go forward with things,
Well, I
but
understood that there were barricades to getting shared information. And that was one of the suggestions out of the task force.
right. So there has been an MOU in place since, I believe, 2017 that outlined the information to be able to be exchanged between the two entities. That MOU is up for review by July 1st of this year, and that is also something else that we're working on to get forward and going with. The CYFD side with the investigators immediately in the FAC pretty much have universal overall access to whatever they need, either through myself, my sergeant, or the detectives. We are at that point to where it's a seamless level of communication. The field level is a little bit different, and it deals simply because of the way misdemeanor crimes are responded to and investigated, and that again goes back to the co-housing of the two entities.
Member Waits?
Oh, okay. You know, the data that you gave me, or you gave us, 800% increase. I mean, that's huge. Me as a manager, if I saw something that was 800% increase, I would take action. I guess my question to you is anyone listening to you? Are they listening to your needs and are reacting to those needs?
I do feel that we're being listened to. I am waiting for the reactions, and that's the best I can give on that one. My proposal that included the percentages and the evaluation and my basically roadmap of where we need to go was delivered 2 weeks ago, which is the time frame that anybody's had to try to respond to my request.
Yeah, go ahead, Dr. Cass.
It wasn't clear to me, what was the cause of the 800 to 1,700% increase in caseload, and what were those specifically associated with?
So, April of last year, we implemented different TIN codes, dispatch codes, and they dealt with physical abuse, sexual abuse, and neglect of children. So back to that number of that 14,139 SCI calls that came in, each one of those calls would fit in one of those criteria. Historically, their felony level priority calls, emergency calls, would be the initial things that we would be going out on as an agency or as a detective and working directly with CYFD on. When this change happened in April, pretty much the call would come into SCI, it would get screened, they would, and when I say they, CYFD would evaluate how they needed to respond to that, and their response system is dramatically different than what APD does. However, when anything was reported to us, immediately we did a dispatch. So as they got a call that came in that maybe a child was not seen at a doctor for eyeglasses, they would put it underneath their criteria and respond to it how they seemed appropriate. We would get the dispatch and we would be there within a day, usually a couple hours or even less. That was where the increase went through the roof. And that is where my MOU with the CYFD is trying to address that to where we get back to the most emergency issues to be addressing those immediately. And the secondary ones like lice, truancy, and other things are screened, but we are handling them in a more appropriate way than pushing out an officer. One of the other problems that happened with that was our officers were going out, maybe seeing this child that didn't go to the doctor at 8 o'clock in the morning. Then that would get back into the SCI system. And again, later that night at like 8 p.m., another officer would go out and see that child again. Then 3 days later, CYFD would go out and see that child again. As we talked about children being, you know, pretty much the, you know, a major victim. You don't want to re-victimize a child. These exposures are not necessarily the best means to address these. And CYFD's got great ways to address and great ways to interact with families and children. And we are looking at how to collaborate with them better to get a best response rather than an overexposure.
Thank you. I have just a couple more. One is, what's the impediment or what's necessary to become a CACU officer? And what makes it difficult to fill the positions that you have? And then how long, you mentioned 2-year turnover rate. Could you address that as well, please?
So not to be graphic, but the cases that our detectives intervene into are extremely graphic, extremely heartfelt, and difficult to progress with. When you see a very young child suffering from a very serious injury caused by somebody repetitively, it's mentally straining. We have criteria for our detectives to ensure their behavioral health side, but being constantly exposed to this level of visual graphics is the #1 reason why I see the massive turnover. The criteria to come into CACU, it's not the highest that it could be, but it's definitely not the lowest that it is. We have to have a realization that we are in a position to where we want quality, but we still have to have quantity. As we fill our detectives, just like I mentioned, I have 2 brand-new detectives that have been with us for approximately 2 weeks. They go under an on-the-job training program directly inside of our unit to give them ideas about how to go forward, give them education. We have standardized their education for investigations across the board. So even though we may get an individual that only has a few years on the department, we ensure that they have the knowledge or the tools necessary or the resources to ask to ensure that they can complete a thorough investigation.
Thank you.
Go ahead. I want to ask you if there's a program out there that you would like to see APD emulate in this arena. Is there a city out there that's doing something that you think would be smart to do here? Is there some measure that you are using to come up with where you want us to go? Because you've seen it somewhere.
So I've actually been in the position for about 6 weeks.
That's what I heard.
So I'm a quick learner, and I've got a very robust background with investigations and other avenues. BCSO is probably our closest counterpart, and they've got some good programs that I would like to mirror or get involved in. But I do believe that we do have a premier methodology in place. We just don't necessarily have the full resources that are needed to go forward with that methodology. I'm not aware of any other major municipalities that have a more robust idea of program beyond what we're doing. The majority of the changes that I've seen are more on my child exploitation division, where they intervene in the solicitation and the trafficking of children for prostitution or other reasons.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. So I just wanted to give you some food for thought on this topic because, I mean, the number of detectives per the number of call-outs, that's a logistical challenge that has to be met, certainly. Increasing communication and collaboration with CYFD, of course, is a good idea. But I think the problem we've seen in a lot of these cases and what is so upsetting to the community is that we will have APD will be called out, APD will have an interaction with the child, and then, like in the case of Omari Varela, I think officers had been out several days before his death by his parents. In the Victoria Martins case, there had been APD contact. In the 7-year-old case, the officers were called out, and the accusation from the community is just that APD mishandled the entire call. No, the investigation wasn't thorough. No charges were brought by local law enforcement, and it had to be the Attorney General who handled that. So I think, like, from the problem I see in a lot of these child abuse cases is that we get officers out there, but we're not getting the response that we should. And the intervention that needs to take place isn't taking place. And so I think the things to consider are, like, what sort of red flags are you going to look for in the history with the individuals or the child that will cause you to escalate the type of investigation you're doing? When does it become necessary to expand your investigation into interviewing collateral parties? Does an investigation have certain or is there ever a situation that has certain characteristics where we might decide we want to have an extra level of review or supervision? Maybe it needs to pass through another set of hands or be viewed by another set of eyes, things of that nature, because the problems generally we have aren't just that officers don't make it to the calls. The officers have made it to the calls, but we're not seeing the outcomes we want nevertheless, and we're seeing things be done wrong or just stuff like that. So I think if you if we could be more detailed about, you know, what are the characteristics of a call? What type of investigation do we do? Do we modify some of our policies? Do we ask, are there certain warnings that cause us to ask certain questions in an investigation involving a child so that hopefully we can firm some of that stuff up in these calls involving children? I think in general, they need to just be handled with special care and not be treated the same as all other calls, because you guys do have, like, you know, an enormous task in front of you. Just law enforcement for the city of Albuquerque, a city of almost 1 million people, roughly 900 officers. That's a lot of work to do, right? And so, of course, unfortunately, not every call gets the care that it really needs. And that's just a logistical challenge. But when it comes to children, those cases should probably be handled very specially and distinctly. And maybe there could be a separate SOP or an elaboration on the investigative procedures when it comes to cases involving children. Something of that nature is what I would like you guys to sort of toss around.
There's an example, a similar lateral example, if you will, that I've seen APD advance with great success, and that is a threat assessment relative to stalking cases. You know, you guys have been awarded nationally recognition for this kind of work. That's exactly what she's talking about, is what are the things that you see in the cases? Do you have the analyst ability to be able to dig down and say, what did we miss? What could we have seen that we shouldn't have? Are there patterns in these kinds of cases that would lead us to create a threat assessment for children? Is that possible? I don't know the answer. I want to make sure that I tell you that whatever you decide to do, however you progress, I invite you on behalf of this board to come to us every month and tell us what's going on, because it is vital that you not just try to improve it yourself and not tell the community. We are waiting to hear from you. Not just this board, I mean the community. People need to know that you're working hard on this and how you're doing that. If you just talk about numbers, if you just talk about bureaucracy stuff, you're not going to get it done. You're not going to bring us with you, and I'm asking you to bring us with you. This is an important journey, not only for you and the children, but for us. And so we're asking for you to show up here.
So if I could respond just real quickly. So what you're talking about is a risk assessment matrix, and that is something that the Deputy Secretary of CYFD and I have already started to talk about, and we're looking at trying to figure out where to go forward with that and how to look at it. So that is already on the map of what we want to go and deal with. My history within APD, I've been there for 16 years. I was the actual original technological builder of the Real-Time Crime Center, so I know how to use their analytics extremely well. I've already been in contact with them to start looking at what avenues they have, what they can give us, and I've already asked for some information to look forward with that. The cases that you've referenced, APD has to rely heavily on our partners from different resources to go forward in certain cases or provide additional things. Probably the closest parallel I can give you is our CIT program, to where they are constantly collaborating with their stakeholders to figure out resources and means to intervene with individuals that need care. The cases that you're referencing, there are dots that can get connected. They're probably not going to be ones that are going to get connected in the field. They're going to be ones that are connected with analytics or the co-housing of CYFD with the CACU unit, so we can build that seamless understanding of how they progress with the case and how we progress with the case. There's a lot of cases that CYFD will bring to us that don't necessarily meet our threshold, and they become frustrated because it's a child. We want to protect our children as much as possible, but there may not be a criminal aspect that we can go forward with. We partner with them at that point in time to try to find additional stakeholders to intervene with the family or provide resources to the family to progress with. The secretary from CYFD, I think, holds that same kind of avenue and understanding, is that there's a robust structure that we can start to implement that deals heavily with the CYFD taking a very active and progressive role, and then utilizing law enforcement as the criminal element that may or may not necessarily need to be there, but can also be used in a proper way. One of the things that I've been looking at heavily to try to get involved with is something called Project Safe Child. just like our CIT unit, they go out forward and try to intervene with individuals that need that care on a repetitive basis, a chronic individual that calls or is seen services. That's the same thing I'd like to go ahead and implement over on the APD side, is where my detectives go out and deal with families that are chronic callers, chronic receivers of resources, but don't necessarily meet a criminal element, to where we can get them in contact with stakeholders or other resources that are necessary. That Project Safe Child has been a pretty good success for BCSO, and it's already got a good platform. I'm just back to the point to where my resources don't allow me to get involved in that just yet. So the roadmap that you were speaking of and looking forward is already in place and is going, brick by brick. I'm not going to be able to change it overnight, but I'm definitely going to change it by the time I'm done.
Could you tell me your name again?
Lieutenant Nicholas Sanders.
I met you before. I met you at a mayor's thing. I
Yes.
remember that we met. I want to emphasize that anytime you have an update for us, and I hope it's frequent, I'd like to see you come here and report to us. You're welcome on this agenda anytime you want.
I appreciate that.
It's very important that the community be brought along with the changes that you're trying to make. And I wish you all the best with this. And please let us know if, as a community, we can be helpful. There's a lot of service providers. My work history involves the nonprofit business community and human services. There is a body that I talked to the deputy chief and the commander about, which is the multidisciplinary team, which is specifically learning from death and injury cases, so that you can not only make changes to your systems interagency-wise, not just with the state, not just with APD, but with all service providers, all faiths, and everybody else. So I don't know if you guys are already on that?
Yes.
Okay, good. And that's a good way to access that kind of services. There are people out there doing the same work, touching the same families that you are. And there's a way for us to do this smarter than we're doing it.
The mayor called a large committee, I believe a week ago, and we met in the Southeast Community Center to start discussing this. And there were stakeholders from all the different entities, well past what MDT provides and brings.
Be sure and invite us. Some of us may be interested in going as well. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yes, and I would love to hear about the implementation of the risk assessment tool. If you guys could present us with that, that'd be really cool to learn about, for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is City Council. Hey, Julian.
Madam Chair, board members, the council has formally introduced the 2017 CPOA annual report, which is bill number OC 1928. It's been referred to the Finance, Government, Operations Committee, but next week's committee meeting has been canceled, so it'll be heard at the June 10th FGO meeting. And with that, I stand for any questions.
I'm not entirely sure where things stand right at the moment, because I know that Joanne has been out. But where are we with new board members?
I saw the last board meeting by tape because I was injured. But I understand that you have sent me, or you said you were going to send me the names of the people. So all I need to do is to set that up. And I think that if you and Valerie and I can put our calendars together, we can make that happen. Is that the thing that's blockading them from becoming board members? What is the step on your side for this to happen?
Madam Chair and Board Member Fine. Yeah, I've been kind of just waiting to hear back from you. On my end, I'm setting up some meetings with them and counselors as well.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily a blockade, but I am just kind of waiting to hear back from.
So then what
you.
is your timeline? Because, this will be in the next week to 10 days that we'll get that orientation thing going. So
Sure.
What's your timeline after that?
Let me look at my calendar just to see when the next kind of city council meetings are. Just for reference on when we can introduce, the next one is the 20th. So if
We could do it before the 20th,
meetings
that
happen,
would be
yeah.
useful.
So we can, if we have it by the end of next week, we
Okay.
can hopefully have them introduced at the 20th meeting, and then,
And what do you need from us? Just an email from me saying we've done the orientation, we're good, let's go? Okay.
To introduce them, not appoint them, right?
Madam Chair, yeah, that would be to introduce. What we normally do is introduce them at one meeting and they're heard at the next meeting. So the next meeting would be June 3rd. In this case, you know, and this is just my own personal suggestion, but we may want to just see if we can maybe get immediate action on it, just so we can get them introduced and heard immediately, especially if you guys have met with them. And
Well, we've already oriented one of the three. We've already
Right.
done this once, so we just have the other two to go, and we're good.
So there'd be a possibility, we would have to get council approval and kind of suspend the rules, council rules, but it is an avenue that council can take sometimes if they need to get things done in a more immediate fashion.
Okay.
There aren't many, but there are a couple of new faces out there. Is anybody sitting out in the audience one of our prospective board members?
No.
So they can't be appointed to the board or confirmed to the board participate yet until they participated in a meeting, right?
Can you suspend that rule? Because Tara's
I mean,
already done
that's,
it.
well, Tara
Tara.
has been to a portion of one. She hasn't been to a full one yet, but we have that hurdle to overcome as well.
It would be good if we were clear on what the game plan is. What will you need from your side?
Yeah, Madam Chair, board members, yeah, by ordinance, they are required to attend a POB meeting before they are appointed, but
So at the earliest, we're talking about a July,
No, June?
well, they got to come to June board meeting,
Oh, July to come.
July to be able to participate. Ay, 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 this
If
is like
there's
the
some way you
never-ending
can
story,
suspend
isn't it?
that, that would be great. You know, this has taken a very, very long time.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, if you can let us know, like, if there's any wiggle room there, that would be appreciated. I kind of suspect not, but thank you. Anybody from the mayor's office? Okay. City attorney?
Good evening, Madam Chair and board members. I'm it right now from City Legal. Jeremy has left us, so he's moved on to other things. So I do have just a brief update about the status of the CASA case. We are in the process of getting the trainings on the use of force suite of policies approved. They're being reviewed right now by the monitoring team and the Department of Justice. This is a second review after we took comments and made revisions based on the original comments. The training will be rolled out in 4 tiers. So the first tier is something of an introduction and a preload. And so right now we should be getting that done very quickly, but it depends on the date that it's approved by the DOJ and the monitoring team. And then we will continue to get feedback on the remaining tiers of the training after that. We've received IMR 9, we're reviewing that and working on implementing recommendations. The next site visit from the monitoring team is May 20th to 24th, and very soon, if it hasn't happened already, emails should go out regarding scheduling the next round of amici meetings. And with that, I stand for questions.
You did say that was the use of force training, and, okay.
That's correct.
Any questions, anybody else? Thank you.
Right, thanks.
Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
CPCs?
Chair Galloway, board members, Chris Sylvan, Community Outreach Manager with the Albuquerque Police Department. My CPC update is going to be brief. Last Saturday, we had our second strategic planning training at the Albuquerque Police Academy. Director Harness was in attendance as a subject matter expert. So was Elizabeth Martinez and from the U.S. Attorney's Office, and Lindsay was there, Lindsay Van Meter from the City Attorney's Office, and Steve Aguilar. They were there also as subject matter experts. What our facilitator is working on is he's working on picking up where the board members voting members left off in January, creating the SOAR process. And what the SOAR process stands for is strengths, opportunities, aspirations, and results. And the goal of these trainings is to build out plans for the CPCs to move forward with their work. So the next training session should be in October, I believe. So with that, I stand for any questions, and fortunately, there's no other CPC voting members here tonight, so it's just me.
Thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Is there anybody from the APOA? Okay. CPOA?
Good evening, Chair Galloway, honorable board members. I am not Ed Harness. My name is Paul Scotch-DePaul. I'm the assistant lead investigator. Director Harness is away at a training session, and I've been asked here to be here in his stead. He did send the following report, which I'd like to relay to you. The PPRB, the Policies and Procedures Review Board, voted to move 2 policies forward. The board has received these policies for review, and they are 1-80, which is the prisoner transport unit, and 1-88, which is the sex crimes unit. The Office of Policy Analysis, OPA, is now meeting every Thursday, and I'm sure that board member Van Deventer will address those policies in her report. They're on the agenda. The oversight ordinance was published and became effective April 27, 2019. Director Harness has been in consultation with Attorney Gooch regarding the impact of the changes on the board's policies and procedures. On April 15th, 2019, Director Harness gave the quarterly report to the City Council. On April 25th, 2019, Director Harness appeared at the City Council Committee of the Whole, and he, in the budget request, he asked for an additional 4 investigator positions. As was referenced earlier in the meeting, the Independent Monitor Report number 9 was distributed on May 1st, 2019, and I'm sure you will have a chance to review that if you haven't yet. All members should also have received the meeting invite for the monitors meeting, which is going to be held on May 22nd, 2019 at 1 p.m., and I believe that's in the basement hearing room. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. And no date so far has been set for a status conference with the new judge, Judge Browning. And with that, I stand for any questions, and I may or may not have the answer.
I don't have any questions.
What time is that monitors meeting?
It is at 1 p.m. on May 22nd in the basement hearing room of Plaza del Sol, correct?
And Tina, any of the changes to the ordinance that may affect our policies and procedures, you guys will be sending those out so that we kind of are aware of anything that may have changed?
Yes, Chair Galloway and Honorable Board. We are working on that. There are a lot of changes. Many are not substantive at all. A lot just have to do with your new name, which is just the board. But there are some very substantive changes, including the subpoena power that was granted through the amended ordinance. So we are working through those for you all to review. We're hoping that depending on how those appear for the board, that you may want to get some public input. You may want to get some stakeholder input into how those changes are going to be effectuated moving forward, because it is a big change with that subpoena power. For instance, what is your subpoena going to look like? What instructions are going to be provided to the person receiving it? We want to make sure that the notice requirements set forth in the ordinance are clear and concise, so that that form includes who it is that gets notice. It includes the city attorney, it includes the recipient, it includes the person to whom the records may be related. So we are working through those logistics in the hopes that we can get that circulated to you all sooner than later. But because of the volume of what those changes are going to be, I suspect it is going to take a fair amount of time on the next agenda for the board.
And is that how we'll learn about it? I mean, we'll see it, but then you'll teach us about it, or how we're
The
gonna do it?
idea sorry.
That's the plan?
Chair Galloway, Board Member Fine. Yes, the plan is that you all will get a draft of what that may look like for input, comment, questions, whatever those may be, to me, and that once we work through that process, it may be the board would like to include the public in additional inputs, comments, questions, and as well as the stakeholders to figure out if we have received all of the input necessary to make sure the process can happen. This is definitely going to be a starting point, not a final document when it gets to you all.
But the ordinance is what the ordinance is at this point.
Absolutely.
It's just a matter of how we implement it. correct?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes, that's correct.
Anything else? Okay. You all may have noticed a little bit of scuffle a little while ago, and we need to amend the agenda. So I'm gonna move that we take the piece under the subcommittee reports, under the policy and procedure. It's bullet point number 2, or and it's the piece 275-18. That should have been placed under item number 9 for discussion. So I move that we make that change.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Did we get you, Leonard? You're good? Okay. All right, so we're going to take that, and then I'm going to request that we take a break for just a moment.
I can't go anywhere, I'll just stay here.
Okay, so I'm going to move that we break for 10 minutes or so.
Okay, I second the motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.